Great. Yep. Did I spell your name correctly? Yep. So hit OK. Yep. There we go. Perfect.
I don't know that I have the link.
Good evening. Oh, sorry, hot mic. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Medeiros, and I'm the planner on file for this project. And just going to go through the presentation. There'll be an opportunity for members of the public to speak after the presentation. So let's begin. So this is a hybrid neighborhood meeting, and it's with respect to a Planning Act application, specifically a zoning bylaw amendment, file number PZ-16-21. And it's for 166-188 Greenwich Street. So in terms of the agenda for this evening, just going to do brief introductions of staff, the members of council that are unfortunately not in attendance this evening, introductions of staff, as well as introductions of the consultant applicant team. And then, as I said as well, there will be an opportunity for a question period for members of the public that are either in attendance here this evening or those that are sitting with us virtually at home. So in terms of introductions, two ward councillors, Councillor Brian Van Tilborg and Councillor Josh Waller are the ward councillors for this ward. Once again, my name is Jeff Medeiros. I'm a senior planner with the city, and I'm the planner on this file. Here this evening as well, we have Casey Pongrass, who is taking minutes of the meeting. The meeting is also being recorded on YouTube, so folks just be cognizant of that. In addition to that, the agent, applicant, owner, I will maybe leave their introductions to them when they come up to the presentation. But we have Mark Gladys, Alex Brogantz, who's affiliated with the owner, and then Greg Latimer, who's the agent and architect on the project. So high level overview of the subject lands. So it's actually two separate parcels of land, 166 to 188 Greenwich Street. The parcel on the left side is currently vacant, or on the west side, sorry. They're north of Greenwich Street, or the parcel on the west side, sorry, is north of Greenwich Street, east of Clarence, and west of Newport, which traverses both parcels. And then the second parcel is on the east side of Newport Street, north of Greenwich. Just to provide a bit of a context too for the subject land, so the westerly parcel is currently vacant. The easterly parcel is currently unoccupied, but is vacant as well. Historically, it did have a city building on the property. The property is located in what we call our lower downtown, which composes of the casino, various retail commercial uses, as well as what we're seeing today is multi-unit residential developments that are occurring in various parts of the lower downtown. And I'll let the applicant provide a bit more detail of the specific project. Most of my focus here from planning staff's overview is really just to provide the policy context. So as it relates to the next image on the screen, this is the official plan designation. So these two particular parcels of land are located in the downtown urban growth center designation. I won't go into the specifics of that. There are specific policies in terms of land uses and what sort of development, is envisioned for this area of the city. And with that document too, provincial policy is entrenched in that document. There are specific provisions that speak to, as I said, land use development and changes, as well as things such as density targets and and growth intensification policies. With that document, that's one of the policy documents city staff use. The other one being what we call a zoning bylaw, and that's the application that's submitted or what's being discussed this evening. It's an amendment to the city's current zoning bylaw. So these two parcels of land are currently designated or zoned, core, core commercial zone, C1. If you look at the screen here, you'll see there's an F in front of both of those zoning designations. What that basically means is that these properties are within a flood zone. So there are specific policies in the city zoning bylaw with respect to being in a flood zone. And there's some limitations in terms of having habitable space underground, basements, things like that. The westerly parcel actually has a portion of it is within a C1-12 zone. And that's just with respect to a zoning amendment that occurred to the property to the north. But what's being proposed this evening or what's being proposed as part of these applications is in fact a zoning amendment, which would result in most likely a site-specific amendment to both of these parcels. And that's to facilitate the proposal that the applicant will be sharing this evening. So if there are any further questions, comments, or concerns from members of the public or staff or business owners, this is my contact information. My extension to is 5184. So if interested parties do want to speak to me, I'm more than happy to discuss. And if there is in fact any formal comments with respect to these proposals, they can either be provided in handwriting or an email to myself as well is sufficient. So that's it for the staff portion. Like I said, this is being recorded on YouTube. That we'll be moving into the applicant's presentation next. The portion for members of the public to speak there'll be the opportunity after the applicant's presentation. So there'll be opportunity for individuals that are here in attendance at City Hall today, as well as those that are with us virtually. For those of us that are virtually, one thing that I would ask for that you raise your hand. It just makes it a little bit easier for staff to bring you in to the forum to ask any questions. So, but in terms of format, what we'll do first after the applicant presentation would be to have individuals that are here in attendance this evening. I believe we have one member of the public here that if they want to come forward after the presentation, we'll have them come forward first. So with that, I'm going to carry the discussion to Mark Gladys and his team. So Mark.
Thank you, Jeff. Can you hear me clearly? Just making sure that you can hear me, Jeff.
Yeah, we can hear you. We're just turning up the volume, but we can hear you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. I'm Mark Gladys, and I'm going to be representing our team today. With me today, virtually and in the office here at Studio Canoe, is Greg Latimer to my right, and Ian Huff, who's an architect with the firm. We also have Manjit Burke, who is the construction director at Scale. And we also have Alex Brogans, who's representing Scale Developments. So thank you for this opportunity to do a short presentation on this proposal. We are representing Scale Developments in Toronto for the zoning bylaw amendment. And as Jeff said, we are requesting a change from the current FC1 zone to an HFC1 exception zone to permit the construction of 2 high-rise mixed-use buildings. Tonight's presentation will highlight what the public often wants more information on, but our presentation is meant to elicit and encourage your feedback and to answer your questions. We also have some new drawings that we have just recently uploaded onto our website. So if you had an opportunity, go to our website and take a look at the project. Please do so now. We've added some new drawings since Saturday. Next slide. So to introduce the subject site, as Jeff was pointing out, it includes 2 lots, 166 and 180 Greenwich. 166 is vacant and 180 has an existing building on it, which was the former pollution control lab, which is now vacant. The site is adjacent to the Brant Crossing Shopping Center and the Farmers Market and Shallow Creek Park. The immediate area is currently characterized by low-rise commercial plazas and standalone retail, restaurant, and grocery establishments surrounded by large surface parking lots, wide arterial streets, and vacant or underutilized service lots to the south and east, like the subject site. Land uses within 400 meters include the Elements Casino, the Civic Center, Harmony Square, Market Square Mall, Conestoga College, and the Brantford Laurier campus. Next. So here we see the proposed site plan, which shows two buildings on either side of Newport Street. The main building frontages along Greenwich Street. Parking will be within 3-story podium structures, which form the core of each building and thereby minimizing site excavation. The areas colored green on the map are exterior amenity areas for each building. The site is well situated near 5 transit routes and is within walking distance of many stores, personal services, employment, and parkland, and is considered a transit-oriented development. Next. So here we have an aerial view of the proposed development, which will include 337 apartments, commercial uses at grade, and 391 parking spaces. From this vantage point, you can see the proximity to shopping and Shallow Creek Park. Please note the extensive use of terracing or step backs on each building, which helps to visually reduce the height, scale, and massing of the buildings. Also, please note the green roofs, which cover approximately 3,700 square meters. And it's one of the many green features or technologies that will be incorporated into this development. These potential green strategies may include gray water collection for irrigation, built to LEED standards for energy efficiency, and extensive tree planting, which will be owner maintained. Next. So here we have a drawing of the proposed mixed-use building A. This building is proposed to be a condominium and includes an 11-story building with 191 apartments and 227 parking spaces. Building A will provide a landmark or gateway to downtown Brantford, presenting a west building elevation measuring 48 meters long and 41 meters high, thereby affording the residents dramatic views towards the casino and the Grand River beyond. The project is an opportunity to create a defining architectural feature through articulation through balconies, terracing, and the use of engineered stone panels for exterior cladding, which will strengthen the area's identity. You can also see here the Greenwich streetscape, a continuous treatment of 131 meters of frontage, including a sheltered sidewalk for the commercial uses, 23 trees planted, and a widened public sidewalk. You'll also see a large landscaped area between the building and the rail spur line, which is in the foreground. Next. So here's a drawing of the proposed mixed-use building B, which will be a market rate rental apartments. This project includes a 10-story building with 146 apartments and 164 parking spaces. This view looks across Greenwich Street towards the Newport Street facade of building B. In the foreground is the proposed South Plaza, which forms the entrance to building A. Please note how the building height and orientation of the windows and terracing facilitate public safety with eyes on the street. Next. On the ground floor of each building will be commercial retail spaces. A total amount of commercial space being proposed is 1,664 square meters or 17,811 square feet. In building A, 883 square meters of commercial space and 23 parking spaces will be provided. And in building B, 753 square meters of commercial space and 23 parking spaces will be provided. The zoning amendment identifies a variety of land uses to be permitted, including neighborhood convenience stores, general offices, specialty retail, and personal service stores. The commercial office space on the ground floors of both buildings could translate into a maximum of 89 office or 35 restaurant jobs based on standard employment measurements. Therefore, the design of the proposed development will influence and integrate with the future development of this neighborhood as it becomes a complete community and is an important step in transitioning Greenwich Street into a downtown Main Street. Next. Similarly, in this image, we introduced improvements to Newport Street. These include more trees, a bike path located where the cyclist is. You can just barely make that person out there in the foreground. 2 small plazas and the potential for public art and active programming in the South Plaza in the foreground. Please note how the facades on both sides of Newport are 3 stories high, creating a human scale, low-rise context for residents and passersby. Next. So here we have the landscape plan, which shows extensive landscape improvements, including 79 trees being planted, landscaping along the rail line, and attractive street furnishings and trees along Greenwich Street. There are 5 key features identified in this plan, and they reflect the planning reports that the city has produced in the past, such as the Downtown Master Plan and the current Mohawk Lake District Plan. So the 5 features include the 2 landscape plazas, the north and south plazas, the Newport streetscape, which we discussed, the Greenwich streetscape we discussed, and just briefly, we'll go back to it in a minute, the Newport bike path. Now, regarding the side yards, the side yard plantings to the east and west, setbacks for the front, rear, interior, and exterior side yards all comply with the zone requirements. The interior side yard, which is adjacent to 192 Greenwich, will be a 5.8 meter wide planted strip with about 10 trees proposed to be planted there. On the exterior side yard with 1100 Clarence Street South, that will be a 6 meters wide and includes a large west landscaped area of about 567 square meters, which will include 14 trees to be planted to visually separate the proposed development from the rail spur line. Next. So this chart is a summary of the city's zoning requirements and what's being proposed. As we see here, this proposal conforms to most of the zoning requirements, except for height and a slight reduction in parking, I believe by 1 space. So we exceed the city's requirements in many of the provisions noted above, like lot coverage and landscaped area. Next. So to quickly summarize the proposal, there are a number of community benefits listed here, particularly increasing the number of apartment units available in Brantford, new commercial spaces in the downtown, and landscape and infrastructure improvements. Both the residential and commercial development are helping to evolve the area into a complete community by adding a permanent residential population of over 300 new households. The applicant intends to implement where possible the streetscape improvements defined in the city's Downtown Master Plan, the Downtown Streetscape Design Plan, and the Mohawk Lake District Plan, in order to enhance the role of Greenwich Street as an emerging and important downtown Main Street. This proposal conforms to the policies of the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and the Brantford official plan. So in order to begin implementation, we need to amend the zoning bylaw and to start the site plan approval process. Next. So thank you, that's our presentation, and our team would be happy to answer any questions from the public or from the councillors. And Ian is just going to put up a set of 3 images to help everybody focus on details of this project should they come up in the discussion. Thank you. So over to you, Jeff.
Great. Thank you for that comprehensive presentation, Mark. Much appreciated. So I guess we could begin into the question period. So let's perhaps begin if any individuals who are in attendance at City Hall today, if you would like to come up to the forum here and the seat here and ask any questions. If you don't have any questions, then we can proceed with virtual comments.
I need to identify myself. I take it.
Correct. Please and thank you.
Okay, I'm assuming it's live now.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Sandra Bigger. I live at 92 Superior Street in Brantford. So this is very important to me because I live in the area. And I do have a couple of questions I was interested in asking. One, traffic. What are you going to do with the traffic? Already Clarence Street is very, very difficult at certain times of the day. What are they going to do to make the traffic calmer and more reasonable? We're just going to throw more cars into the area, basically, and it's going to make it somewhat difficult. The other thing I neglected to see was anything in terms of environmental issues. I didn't see anything in terms of solar panels presented. I didn't see anything in terms of how we were going to put electric cars into this building. And these are issues that we are going to have to start addressing in this city, in this province, and in this country. We need to address the electric vehicles and hybrids that are going to be on the roads that need to be plugged in, and also to look carefully at alternate fuel sources besides fossil fuels. It's critical that we take looks at these things. And I think that this might be a great opportunity for Brantford to go on the lead and show a little bit of how we're being proactive in terms of trying to help with the environmental issues that we're facing right now. The other thing I was wondering is are those street buildings down at the bottom, are they amenable to having sidewalk cafes? And it sounds like you're going to encourage the streetscape that we were already showing for Brantford that's happening in the downtown. Is it going to be carried on through this part of the city? We're going to continue carrying that. And the other thing I was really interested in was who was going to be living in these buildings. I don't see anything that's geared to income or anything that appears to be low rental incomes. It appears to be it's going to be market value rents, and it's going to be market value townhouses. And I realize we want to make sure that everybody has housing, but is this the best use for the lands that we have available? That's about it.
Jeff, did you want me to respond to Sandra?
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sandra. Those are all really good points. I did want to touch on a couple of them. Unfortunately, our expert on traffic and transportation, Julia Salvini, is unable to join us today. But the traffic impact study does basically address a lot of the concerns you're mentioning about traffic. We know it is busy down there at Clarence and Colborne at peak hours. What I can tell you is that we have a demand management model that we are looking at. Currently, we anticipate approximately 135 and 205 vehicles on weekday mornings and afternoon peak hours being added by this development. So it's quite doable, and we have had initial contact with the city staff, and they don't feel that it's undue as a problem. We are going to be proposing 2 eastbound lanes to be restriped so that we can deal with those kinds of crunch points at those peak hours. But I know it is a busy intersection. It's one of the busiest in the city. So we are completely cognizant of that, and we are working on it. So we do have a solution about these restriping of the lanes and to address that extra flow of people coming out of this development. On environmental issues, I hope you noticed that we did talk about some of the green technologies that we are looking to employ here, and it goes beyond that. We are going to have a tremendous amount of bike storage in both buildings available to the residents to encourage more people to cycle. And we are creating, as I mentioned, the actually, Ian, could you call up the one image of, oh, sorry, Jeff, the one image of the Newport streetscape. That really highlights some of the capacities that we're trying to create to encourage cycling, because we totally agree with you that we need to change our modes of getting around the city. No, one back there, Jeff. Perfect. So it is proposed that we're going to be putting in on Newport Street a bike lane, which will help people coming from East Street and from Shallow Creek Park to come on safely onto Greenwich. And we're also looking at widening with the city's participation, the sidewalk and cycling capacity on Greenwich. So that will help discourage, I hope, a lot of extra automobile movement and encourage people to cycle. So we are creating capacity for cycling within the buildings to make it easier for people to cycle to work. But also, as I mentioned too, this project is a transit-oriented development. It is proximate to shopping, employment, and services within a 5 to 10 minute walk. That's why we're building this project here, is to encourage that multimodal split, getting people out of their car and moving on foot or on cycling or in transit. As I mentioned too, there are 5 transit routes immediately adjacent to this building. So we have developed, I think it's a traffic management profile for this building to work with the residents to get them out of their cars and on their feet and on a bike. So we are working on that. So thank you for mentioning that, because it's really important. Now, you also mentioned about the improvements to Greenwich, and you're talking about the cafe scene that's emerging in Brantford and downtown. And we totally agree with you. That's why we're looking at creating that commercial capacity so that those kinds of uses like cafes or small offices, doctors' offices, that kind of thing, small convenience stores could locate along Greenwich and then create a more lively environment, but plus create that capacity for people to dine outdoors safely and comfortably. So, and then we also raised about who's the resident profile of these buildings. Initially, we started out thinking that these buildings would both be rental properties. Financing, and I'll defer more to Alex or to Manjit to talk about that. Financing tends to favor condominium ownership. Doesn't mean that some of those condominiums wouldn't be available for rent. That's building A. Building B will be an entirely rental building. And as I mentioned too, we are looking at contributing 10% of the units to be defined as affordable as per how the city of Brantford defines affordable, and bringing that onto stream as part of this development. So we are anticipating some of your concerns in this proposal. Does it go far enough? Don't know, but this is our best shot at it right now. So I hope that answers some of your concerns, and then we basically can take your thoughts into advisement and explore a little bit more. I don't know if Alex, if you want to talk a little bit about financing behind this project at all, or?
Yeah, I want to first of all touch on environmental. So I don't know, obviously, as a public, you don't know how much work the client put in. So we spent almost, it's going to be 2 years on intensive environmental work to clean up the site, which was very heavily contaminated. So we actually very conscious of making this parcel of land as a future for community, and we're creating the community, as Mark mentioned. So we're looking at different technologies, from green roofs, as well as you mentioned electric cars. We are conscious of this. We're actually looking into electric cars and chargers, as well as solar panels. It's going to come later at site plan approval stage. We're just still pricing, as you know, with COVID and logistics, and the pricing is just completely different from where it used to be. So we're very conscious of this and cognizant. So we're definitely going to be looking into this future, and we are actually the client in the scale development. They're very pro, creating community as well as this healthy community where electric cars and this better future. Because, as you know, longer type of projects like apartments, they take longer returns. So like developer cannot just come in and get out. So we're looking at least 30-year commitment. So they are looking for all this efficiency, how to optimize it. And that's just only what I wanted to add from my end, but we're very conscious of environment, and also just to create the community convenience for everyone. And I'm sure we can resolve all the other things which is there.
I think that's everything from us, Jeff.
Oh, just one more thing I wanted to mention too, and this comes as a result of the last council meeting I attended. They discussed the fact that the servicing for sewers and that sort of thing is badly out of date in the downtown area of Brantford. how is this going to impact these buildings? I imagine they're probably in the zone where the services are just not up to what they should be in terms of gas, water, and so on. And I know that's going to be a major project undertaken on Dalhousie and Colburn Street, but I can't imagine that Clarence Street is any better than what Dalhousie and Colburn are.
Jeff, I don't know if you want to tackle that first, or do you want Greg to jump in with some thoughts?
Oh, there we go. Mic wasn't working. Perhaps you can maybe attempt that one first, Mark. I mean, to answer the question, I mean, there's obviously or has been detailed engineering reports that have been submitted to the city. I mean, city staff have commented on that. Typically, there would be a requirement for some new servicing provided to these properties, but it may not necessarily warrant full improvements in the entire system. So if we don't fully answer that question today, we can definitely try to get a better answer for you about what the long-term vision is for servicing. The city has completed a master servicing plan, and that particular report and studies is to provide a framework where, you know, new services will be potentially going in some of the new developments of the city, but also gives you an idea of, you know, what our capacity levels are at today and how are we going to service existing development. And any new development that's submitted to the city, there's typically a fairly comprehensive engineering reports that are submitted that look at the functional servicing with respect to water, wastewater, and stormwater. I don't know if that fully answers your question. Maybe Mark, you can build on that a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just add to that that the MTE are our civil engineers who did the functional servicing report, and they've concluded that the existing infrastructure can handle this development. So there's actually no specific issues related to what we're proposing in terms of the existing infrastructure, both in terms of sanitary, water, and stormwater. And eventually, as part of this process, that entire report will be reviewed by an independent engineering firm retained by the city and paid for by the applicant.
Back to you, Jeff.
Oh, I'll just turn my mic back on. I think that's it for the questions of the moment. But if there are any more questions in the future that you think of after this meeting, by all means, send me an email and we can read later or try to get some of those answers for you as well. So that's it in terms of participants here at City Hall. So we have 2 registrants that have connected virtually with us. So we'll bring the first individual up to the panel, please.
Okay, Jeff, thank you. We have Mr. Eric Mundy. Eric, would you like to go ahead with your question, please?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Can you see me? It doesn't really matter. Okay, I am handsome though, guys. Anyways, the gentleman that's the owner was stating that the site was heavily contaminated. I have done some research on this in the past, and this wasn't even a grave field site. It wasn't contaminated. So my question is, are there any grants available to the developer for property tax, commercial facade landscaping connectivity improvement grants, and mixed-use building improvement grants? And this is a question in particular to the city, okay? You may know the answer because you do all the research yourself. What is that costing me, the taxpayer, in order for me to subsidize that development off of my tax rate? That's my first question. Second question is, actually, you know what? Sandra took most of my stuff away. Love her. Got to meet her. Second question is, in that area of the city, I actually live on East Ave, which is just off Newport. And the schools in that area are in the lowest 2 percentile in Ontario. So when you bring developments like that into my neighborhood, what is the plan and what is the contribution from the developer towards our educational system, if at all, or is that on the ratepayer ourselves? Okay. Let's see. Another question is, have there been any communication with First Nations? In the city of Brantford, the city made a grave error with a site called Arrowdale. And that's an ongoing issue. It's a very contentious issue in the city. And it is certainly more contentious with the rights of the natives within our community and within Canada. And the city caused this huge mess, and it's just going to get a lot worse as it moves on. Which brings me to this. Who is the developer? Is it Elite MD? No? So you have nothing to do with Elite MD?
No.
Okay, good. Let's see.
Eric, sorry to interject, because I mean, those are very detailed questions. They're very good, but I think just in the interest of making sure that we can maybe provide a response to each one, is it okay if we maybe start tackling some of the responses now, and then you can carry on? Because I'm assuming you have a few more questions, correct?
Yes, it's just like, yeah, I talk too much. Okay, sorry, gentlemen, please go ahead.
No problem. So I guess, and Mark might have some familiarity too with the grants, but the city does have brownfield incentive programs for remediation. There's also the downtown CIP. Your question about what that does to you as a taxpayer, I don't have the specific answer in terms of what that does from a cost standpoint, fiscally speaking. I'm most likely going to need to get, ask one of our long-range planners who's involved in those programs just to give me a bit more of a synopsis of that. We are taking minutes of the meeting, and it is being recorded on YouTube, so I won't be able to fully answer that particular question today. But I don't know, Mark, if there's anything that you want to add to that. I'm assuming you're probably going to say something on similar lines in terms of some of the incentive programs the city has.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, we have been talking with staff about some of these ideas, Eric, some of the programs that they do have. We haven't gone any further with that discussion at this point in time. We're still at that point of trying to get the zoning approved and working on the site plan agreement. But as Alex said, the soil is highly contaminated. We know that, but we know that going in, and we've built that into our pro forma. Though, we will be talking to the city if there is any relief that can be provided down the road, but it's not a priority with us. On your last point, I thought that was very interesting about the schools in the area. As you know, every developer makes a contribution to the educational component of the tax system in every municipality. And that will be the case here too. We are bringing 317 units into creation here. And this would be a tremendous benefit to the local educational contribution in this particular part of the city. So I can't speak to what kind of households would be in these apartments, whether they would have school-age children or not. I imagine we will have a mix of people. That is our intent, is to have a wide variety of tenants. But we haven't thought about that exactly, so thank you for raising that with us about the schools in the area, but know that we will be making significant contributions to the educational tax base in Brantford with the fruition of this project. Now, regarding contact with First Nations, we have reached out in a number of ways. When we did the archaeological assessment, we basically ensured that we wanted to have the blessing of the three review agencies within Brantford, that being the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Haudenosaunee Development Institute, and Six Nations. So we have reached out to all of them. Two of the three basically had no concerns about the archaeological assessment, that there was no concerns around First Nations heritage on this site. So we've kind of dealt with that back last year in April. and got the sign off from 2 of the 3 groups by July. We also are reaching out to the Survivor Secretariat. We have contact with that organization, and we have been trying to gauge their concerns or interest in how we can work together on this project. We're wide open to that discussion. Not too much resolved or reviewed at this point in time, but we did circulate the website information to them. I believe they've taken a look at it. We haven't heard any comments back. Jeff?
Okay.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And then just to add on the school board comment too, Mr. Mundy, the school boards are typically circulated on Planning Act applications, and that would be Grand Erie District School Board, the French Board as well as Brant Haldeman Norfolk Catholic District. And we haven't received any comments to date from the school boards, but they have been circulated. And similar to what Mark has said, city typically collects development charges at building permit stage, and part of that monies basically is assessed or specifically for educational components. So that's the item that Mark was referring to in terms of how funds are collected for improvements for schools, and it can be through something called development charges. So I think those were all of the questions before I interrupted, Eric. So please maybe continue with some of your questions. Thank you.
Yes, actually, I'll go back to the one where I was speaking to East Avenue, which is just off Newport. It's basically the only street. It runs basically off of Newport and goes west. I have a grave concern in that there's a steep hill there. Already there's a lot of traffic, and in other parts of the city in particular, I don't know if you gentlemen would be familiar with this at Palmerston and Ada, where the city took a position that in order to protect the people from traffic, they put in Jersey barriers in order to block them off. Now, those two are also avenues, and we all understand what an avenue is for. It's to take the overflow of traffic off the main road, which would be St. Paul. So now with the development that's happened down, I don't know if you know where the rope factory is or whatever down in that area of the city. They're putting in condominium developments. They depleted St. Paul Ave many years ago from 2 lanes to 1 lane. And it's just going to be an absolute nightmare for all those people down there because of the traffic flow. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. What I'd like to see is, at the very least, right up where the food bank is, as a matter of fact, because people have to be able to go in and out of there or whatever, is to have that blocked off and for all that traffic to be directed out onto Greenwich and away from the actual, we'll call it old city. And we are part of the really old city, where the housing for Cockshutt Tractor and all these old farm places and whatever, the super contaminated land that's down on Greenwich. Yeah, that was a product of, I guess, our backs, right? Back in the day. So I would really like to see something like that after being taken into consideration, just to protect my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do I have here? Getting to rental versus market. In my mind, there's a big difference between affordable housing and geared to income housing. In the area that this proposal is going in, if you go onto East Ave and you go up onto Park Ave and whatever, it is a super high crime area. It's terrible. And it's just like, where you're proposing on putting in this development, you're talking about people can go shopping, they can go here, they can go there, go to these bistros or whatever. Well, that's not going to happen without the crime rate coming down. So I believe that, before any kind of development that includes, really, you could actually be part of the solution and pushing this city to clean it up down there. It's a beautiful downtown core. And now they blocked it all off. They have police everywhere. They have, these poor people that are homeless. They have people that are sick and whatever, and they're basically ignored. And the city solution is they just, these people go and steal and they do whatever. They throw them in jail. And they come back and just do it again. And I'm concerned that, I can understand that everybody that puts in a development wants to make money. And that's the reason why you do it. Well, you're not going to make any money when potential customers of yours and somebody like me comes out with the crime stats, which I will. Like, I have to, because this is my ward. And when they're not, I'm looking at you as being a tool for me to get things done and clean up my neighborhood. I don't know if that makes sense. I know it's not your responsibility. Okay. But there is a problem, and your clients are going to face it, like really face it. Yeah. Like certainly in I believe the one that's on, I guess the east side of Newport, there's a creek that goes through there. There's homeless encampments in there. Did you really think your clients want to go and see the despair day in and day out, and police going in there? And, it's just wrong. It's wrong all the way around. So I'm asking you as the developers to help us and make this city what it really is meant to be. It's a beautiful place. I was born here, raised here, until I went off to university, and then I came back to a mess, a complete mess. So please help us. And that's what I'm asking. There's a social economic component to any kind of development. So I would support your economic if you will support our social. Yep. And gentlemen, that's about all I have to say. If you'd like to comment on that, I invite it.
Well, thank you, Eric. We hear you. We know that there are social problems in the area. It was an ongoing issue at 180 Greenwich. We hope to be part of the solution. And as Sandra was indicating, I think just making a more humane and attractive environment, bringing more people down into this area, wide variety of different kinds of people, will help lift the area up, make it more interesting, attract, a wider variety of people. I think, what you're indicating too, Eric, is that there seems to be like a concentration of, these kinds of problems and issues. So hopefully we're part of the solution. And, we are working with the city. We are, like I said, with the affordable units, we'll be working with the city's housing department. We're reaching out to whoever, has concerns or thoughts that we could try to help work with them. So I hope that answers your question for now, Eric. We're just, starting to develop this idea a little bit further. Greg and Ian have developed, I think, a fantastic architectural solution. Now, like you're saying, where there's an economic and there's social issues too. Gotcha.
Great. Well, that's it, gentlemen. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'll see you in the next meeting.
Thank you, Eric. I just wanted to add
Thank you,
a couple
Eric.
things. We're definitely
Go ahead.
conscious of this. And we've been working with city staff. They've been really, really helpful to create this community, which we envision, because for us, as I said, it's a long-term commitment, and we are conscious of those issues. And believe me, for the last few years, we've been dealing with the same homeless and issues which you referring to. So I totally feel you, and we're on the same page there. So we are looking to be a solution there. So whatever we're doing, and believe me, for us, we're showing it through our commitment through different ways, like in financial specifically, and the time we spend on this. It's definitely for us long-term, and as I said, the city staff and the city council has been helpful to create the solution together. As you know, it's not that easy, but everybody is working together as one team. Manjit, if you want to pull in. Yeah.
I'd like to add to that as well, Alex. I think we're all on the same page. Part of our job is to develop communities, and developing communities means addressing environmental issues, social issues, housing issues. And it's not just, yes, there is money involved. And yes, I mean, while we're here, we all need to make money, but at the same time, in order to make money, you need to make sure that the people are protected and people are taken care of. So that's my 5 cents, I'll say.
Congressman Jeet, I love what you have to say. I'm going to hold you to your commitment, guys.
And well, yes, you should. You need to.
That's great.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Eric.
Thanks, Eric. Jeff, we have one more attendee, Mr. Mark Dramak. Mark, if you want to go ahead with your questions.
Yes, good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've got 3 or 4 questions. Mine are a little more pointed to specific segments of data, city policy, etc. And I'll start off by saying I'm a lifelong resident of Brantford, know the area well, have owned property in that area, and travel through there quite frequently. Got to say, gentlemen, the design of the building and the properties, very well done. It's very Toronto-ish in design, I have to say. And I guess when I look at a facility that you're promoting bike use, you're promoting cafes at street front. I look at our recent One Wellington development downtown behind the monument. There was no retail in there. Nobody has moved into that location. Probably a similar socioeconomic area of the city. It's only 1.5 kilometers away from where you're developing. But I really could not imagine any tenant in that building, whether they own it as a condo or an apartment, truly using that as bike space, green space, walking space. The traffic is horrendous. It's busy. So I'm kind of wondering how this development truly fits in that area from that perspective for design, because I just quite simply don't see it, number one. So it's not a question, but that's how I'm going to start off with my questions. Relative to that, I quote our Mayor Davis and our City Council, and I don't know if we have any members of council in attendance tonight. I understand Councillor Joshua Wall is to be represented. But, in 2019 and 20, myself and 8,000 citizens in this community protested the sale of Airedale Golf Course. It was sold specifically to satisfy the affordable housing, geared housing issue in the city. It was a crisis. Every publication in this community has indicated a number of around 1,400 units being required. So I know you gentlemen don't set the policy for the city. I'm not even sure what actual developer, what company are you representing that's actually going to build and own these properties? What is the company name?
Majid, do you want to introduce yourself and the company?
I can set you up, Manjit, if you want. So the company called Scale Development. Company has a scale development based in Toronto. Been building communities.
Done work in Brantford? Have you done any other work in Brantford?
No, this is the first project outside of the city, but Scale did quite a few projects in communities like Newfoundland, Nova Scotia. So familiar with different towns, and the idea was exactly to your previous point. It just really, I understand all these concerns. I'm really actually can relate to you on this because I spent quite a few years in downtown of Brantford and kind of frustrated to see some of those pains which you're going through. And I think it's always hard to be first. And I think we put everything we could right now. Just it's like almost like you can just blame for what it is, or just to try to figure out how to make this work for us. We spent quite a few years on this, and we truly hoping if we can, with the city's help and the staff, which they've been amazing, we can start creating those kind of places. It's going to be definitely the start. It's not going to be that immediate automatic, but we have solid developer with experience, with long-term goals and commitment to the city. So they're not going to come and just flip it and just do something else. That's what's sad. And we came in the project understanding all the complexity which could be. And again, we're the first one standing, just facing all the things, because we want to be this milestone for this Greenwich Mahog community as the city envisioned. And we are willing to take this and just to see like how we can start developing the city and just cleaning this up and just making it more attractable to people sit outside. It's not going to happen right away, but it's just as anything, it will take time.
Okay, so Manjit, if I may, because I've got some specific questions and I appreciate your response. So what is the project value as far as for the total project? What will your investment be here? 10 million, 50 million? What's the
No,
project?
so the project value we're looking at around 120 to 140 million investment.
Okay. So at that point, yeah, I go back to my original comment here, and I'm glad I'm speaking with you as the owner, and I do appreciate this very much. So as a citizen who has had a significant asset taken from us without consultation, the only way a citizen of this community could ever accept that would be if, in fact, developments like yours, and you're saying this is first in the community. So I ask of you, Manjeet, instead of less than 5%, I understand you've got 337 units here between two buildings, a commitment to 15 affordable housing units, potentially. What would it take you to get to 100? Because this city is promoting to us, the people that are in opposition to the sale, they're promoting to the citizens that this is a crisis. Affordable housing in Brantford, they need 1,400 units. And between 2024 and 2031 in the mayor's housing report, his task force report, I'm sure he went through all of this with you before you got involved in this project. We are at a crisis in Brantford to provide housing for these people, and I want to help them. What would it take for you to put 100 units in these two buildings that met the provincial requirements for a geared to income housing, for affordable housing? Have you been asked by the city to do that? Would you be willing to look at that? Because I'm going to rally this community to defeat this proposal if we can't put a significant portion of these units to affordable housing.
Well, we are interested in helping, but
They
we have
told
to.
you this is a crisis, right? This is a crisis in Brantford. I lost a golf course and green space for this crisis. You need to be part of the solution.
Absolutely, and we are intending on being part of the solution. It's about taking one step at a time.
Well, we don't have time.
We don't have time
for steps. We need to accelerate. They told you that when you put this facility plan together, right? This council we voted for, they represent us.
Absolutely.
They stressed to you the importance of this development satisfying this crisis in Brantford. Did they not? Did they not?
No, they did. They did.
Okay.
Now,
well, I'd like you to comment if you did not, please. Is Joshua Wall here to reinforce this?
Well, the reality is that, they are here to represent you, and there is a crisis, and we have to take. I'm sorry?
We hear about this every day. It's a crisis.
Yeah.
Could you just, Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you just let them answer the questions, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. See, the thing is that during a crisis, there's a lot of upheaval. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. Nothing can happen without a system in place. We need to make sure that things are done systematically. And I understand it's going to be painful. It is going to be painful. And when we're building a community, we are part of that pain as well. But at the end, I can assure you, where we can do anything, we are going to stand tall and make sure that we do what is possible. When there's crisis, it's never fun. It's extremely difficult, but we cannot. If I were to say to you that we're going to take it on all at once, every single thing at once, that would not be possible. So there are some things that you're going to see, you're going to hear, you're going to feel that are horrible. But
how many units could you put in this building for affordable housing by the time construction completed? I've had this answer from city council for 2 years. I'm not interested, quite honestly, in this answer.
Yeah.
How many units could be accommodated in this development?
Let me jump in because I'm on numbers front. Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to take it in. So first of all, we love affordable, and I can tell you we studied with lots of ideas. We wanted to do 2 buildings affordable, with affordable component. I can tell you we've been doing it for quite a bit, and the biggest challenge I always face, I always look at community and say, will we create the same ghetto communities which have been created like in 60s and 70s where it's like 100% affordable? And unfortunately, as you know, it's crime and the stigma for community. We don't want to create those. We've really been playing on different projects in different communities to see what's the healthy mix of this. Because as you know, with costs rising, the reality is whoever is fronting the money, they need to see how they're making money back. Right now, with interest rate increase and a lot of things and costs over the past couple of years, developers facing crisis in their own way because they have to front more cost. And we were forced for ourselves to convert one of the buildings to condo to mitigate at least some of those costs, but still keep the community, kind of together. So now, how many units we can afford? I think the maximum healthy mix, which I ever been able to calculate through all the communities we built through, through Canada, it's not more than 20%. And yes, of course, we would need to go and just work with the city, but I can tell you what's going to happen after 20%. As soon as you tip over 20%, you start getting closer to this like crime, which you're trying to avoid in your first part of the questions. And you're trying to get to really, right now, just getting back to forcing those issues where this is, unfortunately, this is economics and math. I haven't seen anything better. So that's why I'm saying, like, probably similar to what Manjit answered. Exactly. We're going to deal one step at a time. We would like to build as many as possible affordable units, and we'll do it through the site plan, still readjusting the cost. But where we are today, we don't want to be the guys who are going to just lie to you and promise to you something, and it's not possible. I'd rather tell you 10 versus 100, because if I promise you 100 and then we build 10, you're going to look back and you're going to be even more mad. We want to build long-standing relationship with community members and do that. And I can tell you, like, running economy and numbers on this project, there is no way you can put right now 100 affordable units there and keep low crime rate and all those issues which you're trying to avoid. It's impossible. I'm sorry, but I don't want to lie to you. I sincerely care about the community the same way as you are.
So 20% of the units would be 65. Can you do 65 units?
We've been looking at this for quite a bit, actually. Yeah, it's manageable. And again, as I said, we're not gonna just like right now commit to anything, because we're committing to the number, but we're looking into also numbers, how this is going to be matched with the cost, which is probably going to adjust in the next months, or actually 2 months, because we already heard an announcement yesterday about another 0.75% on the interest rates. So that's where we stand. So we're definitely happy to look into this and take it offline and discuss more. We are interested in building healthy communities with mix for people who is in need, but there's a fine line at the end when you run the numbers. And as I said, what's going to happen with community if you go outside of those 20%? I haven't seen those, sincerely. Manjit, if you want to...
I appreciate the response, and I'm going to hold you to some of the comments. I also want to make a point here. So we see developments throughout Ontario. I'm going to talk of Ontario as being an Ontario resident. So the initial application comes in for 10 and 11-story buildings. I still don't see it for that area. And then the next thing you know, there is a revision submitted, and those buildings creep to 12, 15, 16 stories. Is it your commitment that these buildings, if approved, will be limited to 10 and 11 stories, or is the plan to add revisions to increase the height of these buildings? The higher you go, the more money you make. It's the Toronto model.
So I could probably answer that a little bit, and maybe Mark Gladys, if you want to add on, or Alex. So we're obviously dealing with a zoning application, and the zoning bylaw establishes basically design standards for everything. Your pools, your garages, things like that. And what it does too, it establishes parameters such as like your setbacks, your parking requirements, and so forth. So the zoning on the property limits the height to 8 stories today. So there's an amendment to go up to a maximum of 11 stories. So any bylaw that could potentially be passed on this property most likely would hold it to that minimum figure. If an applicant wants to deviate from changes, like hypothetically, if there's an approval in the zoning and an applicant wants to deviate from it, that basically means they're back in for a zoning change of some sort, whether it be a variance or another minor, a zoning amendment application. And then this process would start over again. So we can get very specific with zoning bylaws, and most likely that's, I think, the direction. I mean, that's how the applicant had applied for it. Like they've requested their minimum height their maximum height, and that's typically what we would hold them to in the zoning bylaw. So there wouldn't be any deviation from that unless they want further approvals. Yeah. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to add anything else to that, Gladys.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeff. Through you to Mark. You raised a whole bunch of issues. One thing I think I will do with Alex is we'll reach out to Tricia Gibbons in the housing department, kind of hash around a little bit more about the needs in the community and just to explore that a little bit more. But, that's who we have to talk to is, the people in the housing department at the city, and just see what the long-term strategy is for resolving the housing crisis, which is, Mark, as you know, everywhere. I live in Kingston. We're like below 1% vacancy rate. It's just unacceptable. And that's why we're, projects like this are so important, because it's bringing more housing regardless on stream. We need more housing. That's sort of a line we're hearing everywhere in every community. So there's that. And, as Jeff is pointing out, there's just a number of factors here that, come into play. One of the key things with this site is because the soil is contaminated, we have to come up with a optimal number. And I might just defer to Greg a little bit on that. To address the soil issues, we have to go up to a certain height. I think we found our level of, something that is workable financially without compromising the character of the area. I think we've landed on the 11 and 10 stories for both buildings because that works. We can pay for the cost of remediation and dealing with the soil issues and provide the housing and some level of profitability. So it's a complex calculation. This is not a clean site. It's not a greenfield site, which is obviously easier to develop. It's an older, impacted site. So we're very familiar with the constraints of the soils there. And Greg, I think you were looking at a variety of foundation solutions, et cetera. They're expensive. That's why we have to go higher, but not excessively. Anything you want to add on that, Greg?
No, I think that's a good synopsis.
Yeah.
Basically, we have to amortize the cost of more expensive foundation work because of the poor soils, because we're essentially building on the backfilled canal, which was never consolidated properly.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a valid point, guys, because I was going to ask of you one of my questions here, and I relate this to I live in an area of town, West Brant, we're by the GRCA Brant Park Conservation, and I've had to look at the old Stelco Fastener property that has been sitting there idle now for about 10 years.
Is it still Mark? Is it still idle?
It is still idle, as is the ANC property across the road that the city had designated for affordable housing. All in West Brant knew that property was basically with hexavalent chrome, has been contaminated for anywhere from 30 to 40 years. Every fastener process requires a chemical treatment. And so the soils in those areas have been contaminated over the years. So we're all aware that the government recently, I guess going back to July of 2020, had tabled Bill 197 environmentally as far as overhauling their Environmental Assessment Act. So when you willingly admit, which we already know the property is contaminated, I'm wondering what level of environmental has the property actually gone through and requires? Are you going to phase 2 or phase 3 where you're going to get into massive excavation of soils? And then typically what happens, and I believe this is the issue with the Stelco property, they found the leaching was widespread. So properties that are not part of the scope of work here are also likely affected. At that point, your project is on hold and will be for whatever period of time. So to what extent have you gone through these environmental assessments? Because we're well aware as Brantford residents that the property has had some cleanup. You never get in the local newspaper to what degree or any true declaration of what has been done here to the property. But are you now indicating that you have a clean site and you've gone through a phase 2 or 3 environmental assessment, meeting all the government requirements where you could stick shovel in ground?
We have a phase 2 environmental assessment. Basically, it outlines what we need to do to get a record of site condition with the Ministry of the Environment in order to put residential on these sites. So
but you have not completed phase 2.
There's some excavation, and there's some strategies such as capping with a meter of concrete.
Will work.
issues like that. There's also been a full hydrogeological study of the underground water that has been currently submitted to the city and the GRCA. Essentially, it doesn't indicate any underground issues via water transportation of contaminants. So that's all being evaluated by independent authorities right now. But the current technologies available should allow us to get a record of site condition for a clean site with the Ministry of the Environment. We wouldn't be able to get site plan approval or a building permit without that.
Right. So bottom line, you have not completed a phase 2 yet, so you do not qualify for site approval.
We've done a phase 2, which indicates what we need to do in order to achieve it, but we can't undertake any of that work until we get basically zoning bylaw approvals, site plan amendments, building permits. All of those have to be in place in order to start the actual cleanup work.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the city of Brantford's master plan. This is regarding our wastewater and stormwater management plan. The city commissioned a study from GM Blue Plan, September of 2020. And in that consultation report, there was $190 million worth of capital investment required in Brantford here through the next, primarily the focus is 10 to 20 year period. So I guess I question relevant to Sandra had asked earlier, touched on this in her question. In the comment, I think that come back was that generally from a standpoint of water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, this site is fine relative to the Greenwich area. The report that the city commissioned on page 35 clearly identifies that treatment, pumping, sanitary, sewer, inflow, and filtration all require upgrades, particular to the Greenwich Street water station, wastewater management station. The trunk capacity is not there. So you're bringing in 337 units, an average of 3 people a unit. We're gonna have another 1,000+ people consuming water in every possible way. So how do you, I guess at this point, my question is, you as the developer, are you sharing in the upgrade costs for our community? Because I'll be honest with you, I'm indifferent. I'm not looking for any further growth in Brantford. As a taxpayer, I have zero interest in supporting additional infrastructure requirements because of growth. So are you as the developer bearing some of these costs to support the full water waste management system? Because the report indicates we need $190 million in capital investment here in Brantford to support what they're promoting as future growth, which your project certainly would be a significant part of.
Well, Mark, as always, the municipality will get back to the developer with those kinds of costs. We're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Can you clarify that last comment?
Well, I mean, there's going to be an ask. We just haven't heard what the details are yet. Because we know that
you're aware you're building
is challenged with infrastructure deficiencies.
Right. So you're aware, because initially the answer was no, but you are aware this report exists and there appears to be some pretty significant.
The one by Blue Line?
Well,
Blue Plan?
Yeah, Blue Plan. Yeah.
Blue Plan. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We have just a very, high level understanding of it. We haven't gone into the details, no.
Well, it's available online. You can get it. It's about a 60-page.
Thank you.
Probably worth having a look at.
Sure. Yeah. No, but I know that there's ongoing issues of infrastructure deficiencies throughout the downtown. We know that.
Okay. So your map also, my last question here, the map also shows by location of these buildings that, you're a fringe to floodplain area in that city. So you're probably well aware, we look at areas like Grand River Ave and some of the flooding that we had in the spring going back, I believe, 4 years ago, some significant property damage and other city infrastructure damage for water management. What construction techniques and what provision does your development offer for that type of occurrence? Because it will happen at some point in our history. And I guess I'm looking at when you put that kind of a scope in, you're going to have to dig down in the ground, primarily due to soil, but also with flood management. I'm assuming 10, 12, 20 feet, depending on what the zoning requirements are and what your final design is. So is that a concern that you have looked at design-wise? And I guess I wonder, as a Brantford resident, knowing the history, how does your proposal, your development deal with that potential? Because it's real.
Yeah. So in the initial round of comments, GRCA set a minimum ground floor elevation, which we are meeting. In fact, I think we're a little above it. In addition to that, we may not have any underground facilities whatsoever. We must keep all of our critical infrastructure above the maximum flood line, and we may not build any residential at grade or anywhere close to grade. So it would, the retail space also typically would be built with materials that can't be damaged in a flood. So concrete block walls, no drywall, things like that, steel studs, cement board up to whatever the flood line is. So essentially there's no underground space. The ground floors will be above the floodplain as directed by the GRCA, and there will be no residential and no critical facilities at grade. Those are the main design requirements that were given to us, and they've all been met.
Okay. The only other question that I'll ask you is going back to the mixed use here. So on the lower level, and again, I'm reflecting on this part of the city. So if the shops and the cafes do not come to fruition, do you have design flexibility that that space could be converted to living space?
Well, we can't have it as living space. We can't have ground floor living space in that area or in the downtown generally. That's not permitted. So what we can do is, you make a good point, Mark, about One Wellington and other sites, but it is a progressive sort of process whereby people are investing in Brantford. They're trying things out. There will be demand at some point for the Class A commercial that will be provided at One Wellington at this site. And it just takes time. I mean, and part of it is just bringing more people to live back downtown. That is the basic ingredient missing for a commercial expansion. So hopefully this project will help, along with the other projects happening in Brantford, which is really exciting to see. We're not the only ones. Though sometimes you do feel like a pioneer. So, we're working on it. And, there will be flexibility with those retail spaces, how they'll be configured. That's not going to be an issue.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. And, as far as people living downtown, we've been talking about that for 40 years. I don't see it ever happening, gentlemen. The city made a huge mistake putting that mall in the center of the downtown. It choked the life out of it. And until that mall is torn down, there is no chance that you will get any family related or professional residential growth in downtown for living space. Zero.
Okay. Well, good to know.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thanks very much in the panel. Do appreciate the opportunity to ask the questions and be on record here with your replies. And good luck to you going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, Jeff, that is it for our attendees who have questions.
Okay. So I think with that, we can probably proceed to adjourning the meeting. So just to sort of recap next steps in the process. So as I said, this is being recorded, so it is viewable in the future on YouTube. For those that unfortunately may have missed portions of the meeting, it will be visible on, or will be viewable online. In addition to that, there are minutes being prepared by my colleague Casey, and that would be available shortly at some point in the future after this meeting. In terms of public meetings, so this is the neighborhood meeting. It's for better use of words, it's a public information center. It's a way to get feedback from the public, and thank you all for those that have attended and provide that input. It's extremely valuable, and it helps to frame staff's analysis of the proposal, but it also gives some feedback to the developer, and if there's opportunities for them to make any changes to the concept plans, they can take that into consideration. So thank you for those that came to City Hall today, and for those that are attending here virtually. As I said, this is the first public meeting. There will be a minimum of another meeting typically there would be two. So first one, this one. The next meeting would be the statutory public meeting. That's the required meeting under the Planning Act. We do not have a date set for that yet. For those that don't know, there is an election this fall, and we don't have too many meetings left to bring a concept of this proposal forward. However, there will be, or it will be coming forward to a committee of the whole meeting for the statutory public meeting at some point in the future. So I just want folks to be aware that this is not the last opportunity for public engagement. And in addition to that too, as I said at the beginning, members of the public can email me, call me at any point in time. Any sort of feedback that's provided to me does form part of the public record, and staff will have regard for it in terms of our reports and analysis. And any sort of feedback of that nature too would be brought forward to City Council. So I just want to say thank you to Mark Gladys and his team for attending. Thank you for attending virtually. And for those at City Hall today, thank you very much. And those members of the public that are virtually as well, thank you. And everyone have a good night. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.